interventions, this being her maiden speech.
Madam President, honourable guests, ladies and gentlemen, this House believes that the doctrine of creation is more valid than the theory of evolution? Well, there are in fact several doctrines of creation. There's the Hindu doctrine, there's the Maori doctrine, Madam President. There's even a Hare Krishna doctrine of creation with our own multi-million-dollar pseudo-scientific research institute. I do not think that the Honourable Speaker from Queen Mary's College is telling us that any of these are more valid than the theory of evolution, but that the Christian fundamentalist doctrine, posing as science, is the only valid description of creation. I think that it is time in this debate that the so-called scientific doctrine of creation was discussed in its genuine context. That is, within the biblical context of Genesis. The creationist argument is not only profoundly dishonest, but also self-contradictory when Dr. Henry Morris, one of the so-called leaders of this movement, says, the Bible account of creation can be taught in the public schools only if the scientific aspects of creationism are taught, keeping the Bible and religion out of it altogether. But on the other hand, he also maintains it is only in the Bible that we can possibly obtain any information about the methods and order of creation. Now hold on a minute, Madam President. Either the basis of creationism comes from science, an argument that this side of the House has shown to be false, or it comes from the Bible. But it can't come from science in some cases and the Bible in others, depending on who one is trying to manipulate. Unlike Boy George, you can't have it both ways. Your doctrine of creation is not only bad science, it is also bad religion. The 5 books of Moses contain many internal contradictions. For instance, we have been told by the honourable member from New College that creation took place in 6 days. The problem is that the sun and the moon were not created until the 4th day. Without these, it is impossible to measure a day. Just how long were the first 3 days, Madam President? In the first chapter of Genesis, God, who for this parable is called Elohim, creates all the animals first, and finally creates man and woman together. It says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Chapter 2 of Genesis has a different order of creation. In this version, God, who is now called Yahweh, created a man. So as this man should not be alone, he then creates all the animals. Seeing that his creation was not very happy at the idea of playing with the animals, or playing with himself, he then forms Eve out of man's ribs. If, as it's a maiden speech, I don't have to. If, as Dr. Morris states, it is only from the Bible that we can obtain the order of creation, then the doctrine of scientific creationism has serious problems. Madam President, did God create the animals and then create man and woman simultaneously? Or did God create Adam, then create the animals, and finally create Eve? The obvious answer to these contradictions is that the 2 versions were written at different times. It's believed by all theological scholars that Genesis chapter 1 was written in about 400 BC, it is called the priestly text, whereas Genesis chapter 2, verse 4 onwards, was written in about 850 BC, it is called the Yahweh's text. When the Jews were in exile in Babylonia, the editors of the Bible brought the different traditional mythologies together in order to provide a written doctrine that would allow the Jews to keep their identity in a foreign land. One of the fundamental points that the editors would have been trying to put across was their beliefs in monotheism, in contrast to the surrounding people who were polytheistic. By God creating the sun, stars, moon, earth, and water, it prevents these objects being worshipped as separate individual gods. By trying to impose science on the Bible, you are turning a religious statement into a secular one. I believe that the Bible, like poetry, does contain truth, but at a different level, and only a simpleton would accept it at the superficial level. A former chief rabbi said, "There is no difficulty in reconciling the verses of the Torah with an evolutionary standpoint. Everyone knows that here in the Torah is the realm of parable, allegory, and allusion." The Roman Catholic Academy of Sciences in 1982 stated that we are convinced that masses of evidence render the application of the concept of evolution to man and the other primates beyond serious doubt. Charles Darwin himself was buried in Westminster Abbey. The Church of England would hardly bury its heretics in its most sacred abbey. If it is so clear that the majority of the Judeo-Christian tradition takes the Bible allegorically, then it is necessary to ask why you are taking it literally. The tradition of the literal interpretation started only in the Reformation as a reaction against science. The fundamentalist revival today is part of that same anti-intellectual position. Manipulating scientific data in an attempt to verify Genesis, done throughout this book, I might add, is at best totally unquestioning and at worst downright intellectually dishonest. We students are here at Oxford to learn, question, and form our own opinions. To blindly accept creationism as true is contradictory to the entire aim of our education. Perhaps we should ask why Jesus, obviously illiterate and well learned in the Torah, did not write anything. Could the answer be that having seen the Torah become an idol for the ultra-Orthodox Pharisees and so lose its true religious meaning, he did not want his teachings, based on the finding of the kingdom of God within ourselves, to be dogmatized in the same way? Evolution does not deny God. What it does invalidate is a literal reading of Genesis, that put forward by the Doctrine of Creation that the two honourable guests have stated in their books. If the Oxford Union were to vote for creationism, you would not be voting for God, but for a stagnating form of religious Stalinism, devoid of intellectual questioning and reasoning. If you believe in God, but you do not believe in the literal interpretation of every word in the Bible, then you must vote with us. The Creationist Research Society, which aims to represent the proposition, requires its members to sign the following statement: "The Bible is the written word of God, and because we believe it to be inspired throughout, all of its assertions are scientifically true in all the original autographs. To a student of nature, this means that the account in Genesis is a factual presentation of simple historical truths. This kind of thing is called dogmatism by science and idolatry in the Bible. I beg to oppose the motion."